The All Black legend Murray Mexted played every single game consecutively for our team from the moment that he first got capped till the moment that he called it quits. Joins us. Mex, thanks again for your time, mate. What did you enjoy most about that game, the All Black performance?
Oh, I was just so excited to see us playing with, a bit of rhythm. It was just wonderful. Always going to be a tough start, isn't it, in a place like Mendoza, where it's sort of pretty abrasive, actually, the environment for a visiting team. And, they just started well. I guess, they were under a lot of pressure at the beginning, and Mackenzie having his first big game probably showed that. He missed a couple of kicks that he'd normally kick, one charge down. But then he settled in, the whole team settled in, and they just played really well. I mean, I think the last 20 minutes we were off peak, but when you change that many players and introduce that many different players, you've got to expect that first up for the season. Very good.
Yeah, I thought the same, mate. I just really liked the way that we attacked with such pace. We were able to find angles, able to exploit gaps. I mean, I think that this is, potentially what we've been wanting this particular group of players to find, and they did, especially in that first half.
Yeah, they did, and I think the interesting thing was that we were really competitive at line-out too, and we got ball against the throw on a couple of occasions, which is a real bonus. And I thought our flat line attack was really impressive, and that's obviously driven at 10. They look good. They look very good. And I'm pleased to see it's a good start. I mean, we were all hanging out to see what the team would be that they'd name, and they left some players behind, and that gave people the opportunity, and one of those I think is Mackenzie. Be very interesting to see the All Black team to play South Africa, to see whether he gets the nod or who plays him. I mean, you wouldn't know whether it was Bowden Barrett, him, or
Moana. Yeah. Well, what do you do, Mex? You've always been of the mind that you don't change a winning side. Once a guy's got his spot and he's playing well, I mean, it's a good headache for Ian Foster to have.
Well, it is, but remember, we've only got how many more games? Have we got 3 or 4 more games before the first 4? Okay, so we've got 4 games, and we need to settle into our top 15. I mean, there's always going to be a couple of injuries, so we want to have rhythm and flow by the time we play against France, because if you're going to play your big game, it's got to be in that opening game, and that'll be huge. So, I'll wait and see, but you'd have to think that they'd play a lot of those guys that went so well in Mendoza. Maybe a different kettle of fish against the Springboks, bigger, more abrasive forwards. But yeah, I think they'll probably play Mackenzie because he ended up playing really well. That try that Bowden Barrett scored, I mean, that was remarkable, wasn't it? And that was all about Mackenzie. I'd say they'd probably go with the players that did well, mainly.
Mex, is this the kind of style, the kind of brand of rugby that we're going to have to take to the World Cup? You've talked about this before. We've got to play smarter. We've got to use what the All Blacks are really good at, which is to run them off their feet, play at real pace, attack from everywhere.
I don't think so, no. I think you've got to play the percentages a certain amount, certainly in set play, because the refereeing at the Rugby World Cup will be more officious than our refereeing has been at Super Rugby level. I mean, we wanted Super Rugby to be a spectacle, and the referees were not easy on the game, but wanted the game to flow. And I think, it was good rugby, but Test match rugby, World Cup rugby, with referees trying not to miss anything, looking for a reason to blow the whistle, there'll be a lot more stop-start. And I think we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to be targeting more than 50% of set play possession, even against teams like France. We have to have a strict game plan to win those sorts of games. I think what we do have that is our point of difference in many respects is we have the ability to move the ball to space, possibly better than any other team in the world. In fact, the team that would compete most with us there in that area is probably France. Australia don't get the same go-forward ball that the All Blacks get, but the French certainly do. So that's going to be a magnificent confrontation.
Breaking down a couple of areas, in terms of the scrum, the parity at least that we got there's a couple of times where we had them wheeling backwards. That for a start, plus also your eye also on that loose forward trio of Artie, of Shannon Frizzell playing 6. He's played lock at Super Rugby, back at 6, and Sam Cane.
Yes, well, there's a lot of unknowns yet, Marty. I mean, 4 games, as you say, there'll be some players that will be introduced, but I'm thinking not many, maybe 2 per week, maybe 3, but I wouldn't have thought so. Just 2 would probably be enough. But those positions that you mentioned are up for grabs. I mean, in the front row, Dane Coles sort of almost put himself back into starting lineup.
It's impressive.
And those 3 hookers are world class. The whole 3 of them, absolutely outstanding hookers. A young guy and 2 bloody hardened professionals. I like the edge that Coles gives us. He's got that abrasive edge, and you've got to have a couple of players that have that when you're playing against teams like the French. You can't let them ride over the top of you, otherwise you come second. So I reckon that is a very contentious position, and we'll see that change during the next 3 or 4 games, and they'll try different roles. But I don't think that'll break up the team much. I think that any one of those hookers would do the job. The front row seems to be getting better and better. It's pleasing to see that. And the loose forwards, well, they're by no means sorted at this stage. Frizzell, it was great to see him play well, because we need to get this trio right. And as I've said in the past, I don't consider Papali to be in the competition as an open side flanker. I think it's Sam Cane and Artie Severe are our 2 leading guys there. And I think that at blindside flanker, I would have put Barrett as in the running. If you play Brodie Retallick in the next game, and they probably will definitely against South Africa, they have to play Brodie. Then I think you might see, that was what I'd see. You'd see Barrett move into 6. They'll give him a game at 6, in my view, and Artie will be playing at 8. So it'll be Cane, Artie and Barrett. And that'll be bloody interesting. And if it goes well, I'll probably pull him off after 10 minutes of the second half and throw Frizzell back in there and try and get a bit of rhythm in the loose forwards, because that's necessary. The other position, of course, is the inside backs. First 5, second 5, centre, by no means stable selection there. And we've got plenty of outside backs and fullbacks. So, I think it's looking promising, but this will be a huge game against South Africa this week. I mean, they just tore Australia apart, didn't they?
Just? Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether that's a terrible Australian side or a super good South African side. I mean, we are going to find out, because there are 12 players over here. Or is it just Eddie Jones, more of him? I mean, in 2003, they got rid of him. I mean, he's a great headline, but is he a great coach? I mean, or is he just not have the cattle mix? Is that it?
I think he's a great coach, to answer that question. He's not a headline. Well, he's a headline as well, but he's a great coach. I think he's pretty cunning as well, Martin. He's not just straight up and down guy. He realises he plays a lot of psychology as well, which is great, I think, and necessary with a team like Australia. Have they got the cattle? Another question. I don't think they've got the same depth that the Springboks have in the All Blacks. But this game, the South African game was interesting because it was played in Pretoria, and in Pretoria it's also in a very abrasive environment. It's one where the crowd, before you get into the changing room, are having a go at you.
Right.
There's a very sort of we don't rate you, we're going to smash you today, that sort of attitude. It's pretty hard for new players to adjust to an environment like that. It really is a sort of an aggressive response in many respects. So I'm not surprised that the Springboks won that game. I'm not surprised they rested their players, because it's more of a team performance in Pretoria rather than certain individuals. And I think that's where Rassie Erasmus has got it right. He's got a decent squad, probably 30 players that can interchange. And the team against the All Blacks will be a completely different team than the team that beat Australia. So it's going to be interesting.
Devlin.
Thanks, Mex.
Yes, can they do it? The Platform.